Hi, this is Paul, and the group that we have gathered today is going to talk about the Breakwater Festival 2024. Now, because I have these two weddings this summer, unfortunately, I am not going to be able to attend, which I'm really going to miss, but they have just reminded me that I shouldn't feel too bad because I have two weddings of two sons to go to this summer, and one of them's in Italy, and I've never been to Italy before, so I'm really looking forward to that adventure. But I very much wanted to help at least participate in some respect with this because I've been a part of it the whole time we've been doing it. And I still do think that the European portion of this corner, this movement, however you want to frame it, I think it needs more signal boosting because I think it's a little easier for those of us on the North American continent to kind of do everything here. And it's a little tougher with that funny land that's got all these tiny little nations separated by languages to actually accomplish some things. So maybe I'll ask Cassidy to lead off. Well, maybe we'll do some introductions. So actually, probably most of the people here everyone here has been on the channel before, but well, why don't we do some introductions anyway? Go ahead, Cassidy.
Sure. I'm Cassidy. I am an OG rando and a longtime participant in the TLC cinematic universe. And here today as a representative of the Breakwater Festival as one of the organizing teams. Uh, this is our third year doing the festival, and basically the event is aimed at supporting local estuaries, kind of gain more roots in-person communities. So we partner with either already established estuaries or sort of burgeoning estuaries to bring speakers together and create an event where people can have community participate in estuary and yeah, have this really intense place where they can meet each other and have community. So it's been lovely to do, and the last 2 years we've done it in Germany, but this year we're doing it in the Netherlands, which is exciting for me because I live here in the Netherlands now, and it'll be really exciting to see sort of what we can do for the people who have interest in having estuary be more consistent, which we do have a lot of that here in the Netherlands. So I can get more information about the festival later, but I'll pass it off to Boss for introductions for now.
All right.
Okay.
And Boss, you and your son Aaron were in early conversation. And why don't you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, you were still in training, I believe, for your channel. No. It was a very nice conversation. I remember talking to you about my hope that we could talk in a more both modern and imaginative participatory way about the creed, and you said, why start with the hardest point? That was sort of your reaction, I remember.
Well, the Trinity is a touchy subject in this little corner. So if you want to talk about creeds, I'd suggest you go on Transfigured. You'd have a lovely conversation with a certain biblical Unitarian we love here. So
wonderful. No, but the whole idea is that for me at least is that we have treasures. They're from the past and we are in the present. And how can we make those treasures available for people who are in the present and want to do their own stuff with it? And having been trained both in theology but also in business about going about such assets, I'm just trying to find ways to open them up for people. And my biggest claim to fame is that two of my sons indeed are active in this little corner. So that's how Cassidy sort of described me on the leaflet. Okay, so I've got two sons, Aaron and Lucas. If I'm honest, I've got 4 more kids, and they're not all in this little corner. So yeah, still working on that.
Now, one at a time, you know.
One at a time, one at a time. All right. Stefan, alias Charlie Brown.
Yes. So I'm Stefan. Charlie Brown is my nickname my father gave me when I was a small kid and had the hair of Charlie Brown and looked like that cartoon figure. And I've kept that name cherished to my heart ever since. Just for anyone wanting to know why I chose that name of all possible names. So I'm from Germany. I'm 40 years old. I have 3 kids. So that's a few less than most of you here, as it seems. But yeah, I'm not a trained theologian or philosopher. I have a PhD in political science. I'm a federal officer at an agency working for the German federal government. So that has nothing to do whatsoever with the content I engage in this little corner, which is actually very helpful. It frees the mind. Yeah, I've been in this little corner for, I think, almost 4 years now, beginning with the pandemic, and have since then slowly turned from a lurker to an active participant, mostly in the German language chat, very actively there. But I've been on Karen Wang's channel by now. I've been over at Neil and Chad. I've had conversations with Lucas and Aaron. I think must have been 5 or 6 by now already. So that's an intense relationship we have there. And that was only made possible by the conference, the festival that took place last year in Mannheim, where I met Aaron in person. And afterwards, he hooked me up with his brother, with Lucas. And since then, yeah, things have been going steadfast in one direction, which I absolutely love. So yeah. As a background, I also studied German philology and philosophy, so that will be somewhat relevant to the content I will be presenting at this year's festival.
All right. Thank you, Stefan. Sarah, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit too?
Yes, so hi everyone. I'm Sarah, and I've been on the channel I think a couple of years ago already.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a while. So basically, not that much has changed since then. I'm still a student. I still haven't finished my my undergraduate in theology, but I did drop my philosophy study. So I did not graduate in philosophy. What has changed is that I've become a mom in the past year. So a lot of time and energy has gone into that, and that's quite changed the way I look at things. But for the festival, I'm going to take a dive back into what I've done right about the time we had our conversation, which was when I was doing a minor in Orthodox theology, and I'm planning on talking about a saint named Dionysius. And Saint Dionysius is famous for a few things, among which is his mystical theology. And that's probably going to be of interest to some of you because it's about knowing and unknowing, about how you can describe some things, and some things are best described by actually saying what they're not. And what that so I would like to talk about what that means, what we can learn from that, but also for his story, because he's one of those saints that lost his head and then picked it up and started walking again with his head. So that's fascinating. The first time I read that, I was baffled that even such stories existed, but so I wanted to talk about what that means symbolically, what he's embodying by picking up his head and carrying it with him rather than abandoning it, and what that means for how we relate to our bodies today and how important embodiment is, and the challenges that the internet poses when it comes to embodiment. So that's what I had in mind.
Okay. Cassidy, why don't you give us a little bit of overview on the history of the festival and how the 2 previous festivals sort of set the stage for this festival?
Sure. So the festival was started by Matthias, who is the sort of one of the heads of the local Mannheim German community, the in-person estuary group there. And he just wanted to create an event that brought people from all over Europe together to participate in this thing that we've been doing online, and bring it in person. And I think too, it was a way to kind of extend this in-person connection and create a really interesting event that could create deeper bonds with the community that they were already making in Mannheim, and a place where they could invite new people into it and have it be sort of a different way than just saying, oh, hey, come on a Wednesday night, like it's real intensive. And I was able to get involved with him early on in the stages of that. And yeah, I think it just sort of developed from there. It started with one, and we just loved it. And we thought that what came from it was so beautiful, the way that it connected people and the way that it grew deeper roots, that we wanted to do it again. And we wanted to do it again for not just the Germans, but for other European communities. And so the Netherlands seemed like the perfect next place. One, because I'm here in the Netherlands, but two, you know, when you came, Paul, it was a one-night event, but you had a whole group of people coming together, eager to talk and having this sort of excitement. And there has been sort of estuary events that have come up, and there have been people trying to start, but there hasn't been this consistency in it. And so if we can come together and provide a place where Dutch people can meet with people around the world who've been doing this whole estuary thing and meeting in community, and have this festival experience where they can really get together and participate and be known with each other, we thought that would be a great way to kind of start it off and see where that goes. So we plan to do the festival this year in the Netherlands, obviously, but also next year as well. So each year is always a little different. We're always growing and changing and trying to make it work for that purpose of really connecting and growing local communities, more than having sort of like big flashy speakers and events. And so we're always constantly adjusting and working towards that, and finding ways to create themes and different ways of participating that are aimed at that goal.
So what's the theme? What's the theme for this year?
Yes. So this year's theme is touching grass, finding grounding in a digital age. I think it's really easy to get lost in the digital world, just period. But I think especially with estuary, because of how it grew and developed. And so we really like the idea of trying to explore, how do we get outside of that screen and find ways to ground and connect, whether through nature or community and communing with each other in relationships. And we have plans to do that in a lot of different ways. Obviously, we're bringing these speakers together to share their sort of take on the theme and share what connects them and grounds them. But what's beautiful about these festivals is that it's not just about sitting in a room and watching people give speeches. It's putting some skin in the game and you putting things on the table as well. So we're also going to be exploring that by having estuary groups. We're doing a fishbowl Q&A with the speakers where you can get involved in the conversation. We're doing a nature walk, and on the opening kickoff night, we're actually having a sort of open mic type deal where people can come and share their stories or bring something to the table that helps them connect and ground. And so that's really exciting. And as a part of that, we're actually partnering with the Bridges of Meaning writing community. They're publishing a book this summer called Writers of Meaning, an anthology of community. And they're allowing us to share a couple of segments from pieces from that book and read those. And it's lovely, one, because we get to support someone else sort of in the estuary, TLC space doing really great things. But the proceeds for the book actually are going to you and your ministry, Paul. So it's a way that we can support you and give back. And it's really cool to be able to promote that and support you, even though you can't be there with us in person.
Yeah, I get it. I'm really sorry about that. And
No,
each year it's been at a different venue, and this year it's going to be in Vasa's home. Yes. Which is really interesting. He was just giving us a little tour with the camera before we started recording. And yeah, you've got a lot of grass to touch there. Why don't you talk a little bit, Vas, about your home and maybe flesh in a little bit about you know, you mentioned you had 6 kids, but why are we going to be doing this in someone's home? What's that about?
Yeah, we don't know what to do with it. That's the point. No, truly. Our last kid will leave the house on the 23rd of July. So we have to rethink what we're doing. And obviously, when we built the property, which is a long time ago, we used it for several purposes. We invited problem families or asylum seekers or missionaries coming over for their annual leave. And that was lovely. And then our family grew. And so that's what practice sort of stopped. And now we have to rethink what we're going to do with the property. So I said, I like the idea that it's being used. We never took the idea of property serious. You have things that you are privileged to manage and to make as fruitful as possible. And in terms of grass, yeah, there's quite a bit of grass. Some of it is taken up by Icelandic horses, small horses, so don't be afraid. But apart from that, you can play sports, you can pitch a tent if you want to, so you don't have to have any costs for coming out here. I think that's also nice for people to know. There's going to be some canoeing in the river. There's going to be a little bit of swimming in the pool, and we have seeded an acre with flowers. Hopefully, they will be blooming when everybody is coming. And so touching grass is really something that we would like to offer. I'm not talking about Dutch grass that you get in the cities. I'm talking about countryside grass.
Yeah, there's some ambiguities of language with respect to some of that grass. So
yeah.
Northern California grows a lot of grass too.
We need categories
so
of
it
grass.
could be super healthy if participants want to stay healthy. That at least that is an option, and we'll have campfire and stuff like that. So we are really a privileged people that we can be so close to public transport, cities, etc., and be in the middle of nowhere. It's I believe a place that asks to be shared. So that's why.
All right. Now, Stefan, when you mentioned yourself being a federal officer, again, we have different cultural language filters, and I think Grim Grizz probably sort of fell to the floor and reached for his 20-sided die for savings throws at the potential sighting of that. Talk to me a little bit about now. Bas has told us before we started recording that he's not exactly sure what he's going to be talking about. So, but I have absolute confidence that Bas will have absolutely no trouble giving you a really interesting talk, because I have heard in Germany last year, I was sitting across the table from him at that restaurant that evening, and I can assure you he is a fount of many interesting ideas. But Charlie Brown, it sounds like you've already got some thoughts in your head about what you want to go into.
Yeah, I do. I mean, for rather obvious reasons, Goethe will be involved in that too, since I've started a Goethe podcast, although that's only one episode and the rest is taking all of my time that I have, which I don't. And so it's the first thing that I'm going to ask is, why grounding at all? Why do we need grounding? And the simple answer is we need grounding because it affords us a step forward to keep on keeping on. That's a motif that shows up in a lot of literature. And so that is not just my background having studied German philology, but it's a lot about hindsight. I've taken the time to review my life with regards to how literature was involved in my life at certain kairos moments. So either reading a novel or reading a poem, listening to a song, plays that we went through in high school. And in hindsight, they all involve this one through line, which is the defiance of death. And it seems to me that part of grounding is how to reorder ourselves to this framing of birth and death and life that's taking place in between. And I want to convey my personal journey through the phases that I've taken in my life and reflect certain plays and poems and novels that seem relevant or seemed relevant at that point, or in hindsight, I realized they were much more relevant to me than I realized back then. They had a profound influence on me in a way that helped me ground myself in the situation that I was living through. And so it will be a very personal journey taking that into account, and also talking a bit about the medium that we use, language. That's the primary medium that we have in this little corner. It's language, though language is not the only medium that we can have to afford us this grounding, to afford us symbolic transformation. It boils down to an act of translation, which is where we'll somehow relate to the work of George Steiner, because he says that translation is not just an act of language, but actually connecting human individual experiences. And this is exactly what this little corner is about, and this is exactly what estuary is about. And so that will be kind of the through line through my talk. And I will engage in Goethe's Iphigenia of Tauris. I will engage in Shakespeare's Macbeth. I will probably begin with the poem Grass by Carl Sandburg, because that's not just a poem, but it directly connects to the title, to Grass. It will involve Haruki Murakami's Killing Commendatore and Thomas Mann's Death in Venice. And they had profound influence on me, and I enjoyed them thoroughly at the time, which is 20, 25 years ago already now, partly. And as Kierkegaard says, we can only understand our lives backwards, but we have to live it forwards. So this is basically a story of hindsight. Myself realizing that songs and poems and literature have played a much more relevant role than I actually realized. And that is basically the hypothesis I want to propose during the festival, is that if you want to ground yourself in the digital age, get offline, listen to a song or play the song by yourself, read a novel, actually go and watch a play in the theater and, participate in that staging experience. And that will help you at least kind of get a grip on reality that is better than before.
Okay. Now, Sarah, you've already given us a little bit of an insight into the Headless Saint that you'd like to present to this group. How do you see your topic connecting to the theme of grounding?
Well, specifically when it comes to the symbolism of his beheading. So to be confronted with a story like his in our time, we basically want to discard it. Like, yeah, of course, someone picks up his head and then walks away. That's not going to happen. But regardless of whether it happened or not, it has some powerful symbolism in the importance of not separating the mind from the body, that it's in fact one whole. And so where I want to go into the grounding is that in our current age with the internet, we have a different kind of separation of body and mind, where our minds are in this space, in this internet space, and our bodies cannot be. So whenever we engage with this space, we are disembodied. And how can we resolve that problem? And maybe the solution is, of course, in one way simple, which is touch grass, meet people, go to an estuary, make real contact, but also what are the consequences of being in that space so often, and maybe create some awareness of what it means for us to be disembodied so often.
Now, I'm going to make an estuary move here, and I'm going to go around the circle, and I'm going to ask each of you to point to an idea that someone else in the circle has brought forward, and then we're going to take the conversation from there. Okay? So Cassidy, what did someone else say here that sort of caught your interest and you'd like to point to it and poke around at it a little bit more?
Yeah, I really enjoyed what Stefan was saying about understanding our lives by looking back, but you can only do that by moving forward. I think that's really interesting, and I liked his kind of his pointing to the fact that the things that connected with him when he was in his past had this deep sense of the thing that was going on without him even realizing it. I think that's definitely true, and yeah, and kind of pairing that with what Sarah said, this ability of like by going out and meeting people and communing and with nature and others to help process that, I think is really interesting.
Okay. Boss, what did you hear that you want to point to?
What I like about, I don't know if Sarah's gonna get this, but from at least from Matthias, from Stefan, we know, looking back, how much Goethe started to mean to him, and how much getting acquainted with such a body of literature, thinking, etc., has helped him navigate his life. And that is a fascinating thing. I don't know if Dionysius will be the same for you, Sarah. So I'm really looking forward to hear your talk, but also to see what it will do for you in the long run. For me, probably when I started to do my technical industrial engineering studies, I started off with that. I had the privilege of going to a pastor who taught me Hebrew, and I worked on Psalm 42, 43, and I started to make drawings. I started to put it to music. I'm not a musician, so don't ask me to sing it out to you. But anyway, I tried to be as much in that psalm as possible. And then I found sort of the key to that psalm in Psalm 131. And basically what it is doing, it's telling me how difficult it is to really know what your soul is, who you are, what your body is. This whole thing about the Trinity is only difficult if you take it theologically. But as soon as you go to your own life, you are flesh, you are soul, you are spirit. And what do those things mean? And when I was doing all this industrial engineering and then financial management, and I went into Russia for reconstruction after the fall of communism, South Africa after apartheid, and I kept going back to those lessons. And later on, I would say Jesus taught me a lot about God, but the Psalms taught me so much about the human being. And that, in the end, I decided, okay, now I'm going to come out. And we were at a Society for Biblical Literature conference in the Gregoriana University in Rome. So that's pretty much as Catholic as you can get. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to just tell people how Psalms 42, 43 helped me do counseling and pastoral talking with people. And I'm going to do it there, and I'm just going to show them the drawings I made when I was 17. So sort of came full circle back to where it came from. And that was sort of a liberating thing. Not to discard what you already experienced at 17, 18, but to see that as a journey, and journey that takes you to a life that will be richer and richer. And don't think that you will learn it in the end. No. Everything you get now at this age is already building something that makes you unique. And I think the connection you talked about, Stefan, is beautiful, and I really hope Dionysus or someone like Dionysus will do the same for you, Sarah.
Stefan, what has someone else said that you kind of want to point to and explore?
Dionysius beheading, not just because there's a comparison to Macbeth, just as a side note. But apart from that, it's fascinating, this connection of mind and body. And what came to my mind was all the literature of Stephen Porges, Bessel van der Kolk, Gabor Mate, The Body Keeps the Score. So there is this deep connection also in the trauma experience, and there's a way to work through that with the body that helps the soul as well. And so I'm really looking forward to this walk experience that we'll have at the festival, because I believe that, you know, we have to take our shoes off and maybe walk bare feet and actually touch ground with the soles that we have, and dig in the dirt, because that helps us to find the places we got hurt, as Peter Gabriel sings. And so, yeah, that was what came to my mind there.
Sarah.
Well, what the thing that most got me thinking was the cycle of birth and death. Also, obviously, because I witnessed, or actually, I gave birth. So birth has been an important
You
topic.
didn't just witness it. That'd be a very disembodied, disassociative
Oh,
thing.
exactly. So that is a thing that that most interested me. Was most salient to me, I should say. Yeah.
Well, Sarah, your comment makes me think about an oft-repeated topic of conversation in this corner, which is how many men we have as opposed to how many women we have participating. And I kind of wonder if this beheading, this disembodiment that we are one way or another trying to address, this trying to come to ground, because I mean, the internet is sort of this virtual place just floating up there, disembodied. Part of the reason that we have so many men in this space is because this is perhaps now, especially in our developed, modern, educated space, such a thing that has sort of forced men out of their bodies. We no longer grow up, you know, okay, so you're a girl, maybe you're going to be in traditional roles, maybe you're going to be helping mom with housework. So there's a lot of physical stuff to do there. But the boys are going to very quickly sort of get on-ramped into a world of heavier labor, where it will be farm work or animal care, or later an industrialized context where human muscle and sweat are, I'm thinking about sweat because we're having our second day over 100 today here in Sacramento. So, and I'm always too cheap to turn on the air conditioning at church just for a little old me. So, you know, and so now in this cyber reality, what was a disassociation from ourselves has become something really important. And Sarah and Cassidy, you know, both of you are women in this corner that have sort of, you know, came into this as maidens one way or another and are now mothers. And so there is an inescapable embodied. I watched my wife give birth to 5 of our children, and the first time we did it, we were in the Dominican Republic in this little clinic, and it wasn't a bad thing. The doctor was competent, but it wasn't sort of this massive American hospital institution like the rest of mine were born into. And it just seems to me that all of these, and Boss, you sort of pointed to the fact that if perhaps it's not just the physical grounding of physicality, but it is then the storied, because the stories, if we're sort of, if our heads are cut off from our bodies in this cyberspace, stories are sort of the next level of grounding, because it's really hard to have a story without the layer of physicality. And so it strikes me that, you know, even just the way that this conversation is progressing and this festival is progressing, we are in many ways trying to attend to, let's say, the deficiencies of our contexts, and trying to re-embody and get back in touch with a lot that has been lost. So that's this round. So now it's a free for all. I don't have Chad's nice slides to say round 4. Let's go.
Well, let me throw in a dime then. What I really liked about Sapolsky's work, Behave is the book I'm referring to now, is the way that he describes how the prefrontal cortex is connected to our body. And that's interesting. There is at the ventral medial point in the prefrontal cortex is sort of a listening device to the amygdala. And that means something. It means that we were created as flesh. We developed something of a social feeling to coordinate that. And now we are equipped with brains that can make us walk through different stories of other people. So we can experience so much more than just our own lives. But the fun thing is, we still need our body to evaluate whether or not we like the story. So it listens to our body. Is our heart beating faster? Are we feeling comfortable? Am I breaking out in sweat? I mean, Paul is breaking out in sweat right now. So is that happening to me? And that's so beautiful. The body keeps the score, as you said, Stefan. But that's so important, because without it, and that's what Sapolsky describes, we lack two things. One is we don't learn. If our body evaluates, our mind does not evaluate without the support of the body. So without it, with people who have, say, a cut from the ventral medial point of your prefrontal cortex, they lack the capacity to learn. And also, that was the second point that goes wrong, is that we start to take on risks that are beyond what is beneficial for us. I think that's fascinating. Without the body, we do not function properly. Just a dime in there, see who else wants to pick it up.
I often no, go ahead.
It ties back to the great story of Genesis, the creation of man from the soil of the ground, and what Sarah said about the disconnection between mind and body. I mean, we are a mind body, or a body mind, or body soul, however you want to say it. It's you can't divide that without losing the identity of being a human. And so I think if that is part of, the festival as an idea running in the background, I think that's fascinating and absolutely wonderful.
Again, it strikes me, I often will use this turn of phrase in my sermons to talk about risk and sacrifice, that every woman brings a child into the world at the risk of her life. And even though today, thank God, it's not anywhere near as risky as it was, for example, when my great-grandmother lost her life bringing her sixth child into the world in the beginning of the 20th century in Grand Rapids, Michigan. This without this risk, life doesn't go on.
And I'll actually tie back to that in my talk or presentation, because part of my personal experience with literature and with songs was a very crucial time in my life where we had a stillborn child. And so we've had 5 pregnancies with 6 children. My wife gave birth to 4 children, and we have 3 kids. So that tells you a lot of the story that's running in the background there. And so that gave me the impetus to actually say, okay, there's this frame of birth and death and life in between. And poems and songs at moments like these can be utterly meaningful, not just in that moment, but also in hindsight, making you realize that that was something that was given to you, that was a gift granted to you to keep you going on. And it's this keep on keeping on that I think is actually part of why TLC exists. We all want to keep on keeping on for whatever reason. You can be theist, you can be non-theist, but it's still this evolutionary drive that we have to defy death in all means possible, and to be able to continue with our lives. And if we leave out birth and if we leave out death, we lose the possibility to live our lives. And so I think that will be, one of the themes that I want to drive home, is that we need to return to not just cherishing birth giving, but also commemorating death, and put that back into the center of our culture and our society, because otherwise we could just be nihilists and kill ourselves.
Well, and there's something interesting about pregnancy and birth that requires a certain type of death, even if it isn't physical, where you're taking on morning sickness and a loss of even like a certain type of way of living, and processing that and having these 9 months to do that. And it's funny, actually, today, a year ago today, was the day before I got induced to have my baby. So it's very interesting here to think about that and realize how that birth has changed so much of the way that I look in the world and how I ground and how I think about these things. And so, yeah, I really do like that process of like birth and talking about life and death. And, I'm a Christian and I'm an Orthodox Christian. So we're always kind of looking at it in the frame of life and death. And yeah, there was interesting. I was reading this book when I was pregnant called Fertile Ground. It was like a sort of guide for Orthodox women going through pregnancy, and they had like a chapter for each week. But something she talked about is sort of like being pregnant and giving birth. You get to participate in this spiritual journey that what Christ did, of taking on suffering and death for the life of another. And I think that's totally opened my mind in this beautiful way of like what we do when we're participating in life. And we all have different paths, and we're doing this, whether, we have the ability to give birth or not. But there is something beautiful about recognizing that ability of being willing to take on death of a certain kind for the sake of the life of another. Really opens your mind to what it means to live a good life and to live a grounded life for yourself.
It's interesting that, so I'm not going to be there because I've got 2 weddings, and I remarked at the wedding of the first wedding that we've already done. It was the day or so before the wedding, and I've got some cameras at my house. The house is usually empty while I'm here, and I've got a few cameras up there. If someone comes to the door, I can talk to them through the thing and all this kind of stuff. And I saw my son Jared walk out the door, and I've seen him walk out that for the doorbell camera. I've seen him walk out that door many times. He moved back in with us before the wedding so we could save money, for all the expenses he's incurred. And I watched him walk out that door, and it struck me that even though he's been at the house since he's been married, he will continue to be at the house, he will continue to walk out that door. There was a leaving that happened, that because I knew the wedding was coming, there's that Genesis 2 separation that comes. And Boss just mentioned, July 23, his last child will be leaving the house. And it's interesting thinking, Cassidy, about your comments, because I think a huge part of people's reluctance today to get married, not just live together, to have children, is loss of autonomy. And that, one might say that, well, your head is freed from your body. Yeah, you could say it that way. But it's by no means what we were made for. And I liked, Stefan, how you connected that then to the nephesh. The man is a living nephesh. He is heaven and earth come together. So,
and this motif of welcome and farewell is part of one of the most famous German poems by Goethe. And it ends with the leaving of a loved one. And he says, I went, you stood there and looked to the ground with teary eyes. And how does it continue? And looked after me. But what bliss to be loved, and God's, what bliss to love. And that can only partly convey what it means, because I just translated it, because the German flow of that poem is just absolutely immaculate. And so I think that's part why that's part of the reason why I want to actually, refer to some poems and novels, because there's beauty and depth and meaning in those verses and phrases that can help us ground ourselves at moments where we actually need a lighthouse because we're on the in the middle of the sea, and it's roaring around us, and it's dark, and we don't see anywhere. And then someone says this one verse, and it seems like, oh, that's a beacon of light. Maybe that will pull me through.
Well, and what I'm most interested about your talk, Stefan, is the way that you're interweaving it with your life, because there's a meaning outside of, there's a meaning in it in itself, but there's this other added meaning in the way that interacted with your life. And I think, kind of bringing it back to this idea of story, what connected all of us on the early days of Bridges of Meaning was sharing each other's stories, listening to Paul talk with us about our stories and being able to then share each other's stories one-on-one, and to kind of bring that back and ground that in stories and real life person and engagement. There's something so beautiful that surpasses all of the debates and theological arguments that go on there. It's so precious. And I do think there is something precious of having it not on a screen, in a small group, in these intimate moments that are not performative in any way. They're just for those people, which actually kind of brings me to a point that I have to share about the festival, which is to kind of lean into the theme. We're actually not going to be recording any of the talks that these people have and sharing them online. So to be able to hear them and see them, you have to be there. And it's a hard decision, but I think it is a healthy one, and one that really fits in with what we're trying to do, of like really embodying and getting connected to where we are, and not this place on these worlds online that are like infinite and unable to explore all of them in the short time we have in our life.
And with a teaser, of course. I mean, you're going to make probably a sort of teaser so everybody knows they missed something.
Yes. Well,
we're making the teaser now.
We're talking about what that looks like. I was talking with David today. We would love to get the speakers together again after the festival and kind of do a breakdown, and then hopefully be able to do some sort of like conversations with people who were at the festival so they can kind of share those experiences. But yeah, we obviously have footage from previous festivals, and there probably will be just cameras to capture some of the what is going on. But yeah, it's not going to be the recorded ones like we have done previously. The only thing that we might record is the estuary panel, and that will only be as a resource for other people who are trying to make local estuaries where they are in their area. But that's still up in the air on what we're going to do about that.
Okay. Can I go back one step to the autonomy thing?
Yes, yeah? Please do.
No, but I'd like to hear later on, because you have given birth, both of you, Sarah also, and you both said it has changed the way I look at life. I found that a very profound statement. At the same time, I think the yearning for autonomy is what turns you from a dependent child into an independent woman or man, who then yields some of that independence. If you're not independent before you make that decision to go into a relationship, you better don't go into that relationship yet. So on the one hand, you need that autonomy to bring something to the table, and then you start to yield. Now, you have the benefit of this experience. I was profoundly changed by the birth of our children. But now we're in the middle of 4 weddings and a funeral, two weddings that Paul is talking about. Lucas is getting married here at the property. I had a wedding from a young catechumen that I had last Saturday that I could do. And my father is at the moment in a hospice, learning to yield.
Yeah.
And he's got 6 children, and it's beautiful the way that the profundity of the love and the experience that this gives us. And we have said at several points, this almost feels like waiting for a birth to happen, and learning to yield and follow the body So I'm so curious to hear from you, Sarah, also, how has this changed your way of looking at life?
Well, it's made me feel mortal. It's basically the best way to describe it. So it's changed me physically. So I'm not the same that I was before I gave birth. My body looks differently. I don't fit my old clothes. I've had to renew my whole wardrobe basically. And it's in a weird way, it made me realize, seeing this brand new human being, that I have no idea who she is, what she's going to be. She has lots of potential, and I was like that one day, but I'm already like basically a third of the way set in my ways, and there's the end is approaching, let's say. So I'm hopefully I will still have, you know, quite a long life before me, but it's made me acutely aware that it's not going to be forever like that, and death is coming. So that's it. And then the other aspect is also that it's made me realize that I can lose someone that I love very, very much. And that's something that's with me like every day. I mean, she's still she's 11 months old now, so almost a year, and she's not as vulnerable as she was in the first few months, but still, you know, there's just this needs to happen, and then she's gone. So that's it makes you live closer with death. It made me live closer with death, and also appreciate life.
Yeah. I also felt that I before we had any children, it was sort of, okay, fine, I have a lovely life, I can do whatever I want, and of course some people will grieve when I die, etc. But now all of a sudden I can't die anymore.
Yes, it's the same.
There is this child, and
Mm-hmm.
then after that, when our kids grew up, I gave some very unsound parental advice to the children. I said, anything that involves life-threatening situations that you would like to do in your life, do them now.
Mm-hmm.
This is your time. Okay, sorry. Can you cut that out, please, Cassie? No, but afterwards you feel like, I'm not gonna do that anymore. I'm really here now for the day that the last one leaves the house. Watch my steps next years, of course, but yeah, you have a responsibility, and it doesn't feel like a weight, but it feels like a responsibility in the sense of, I really want to see this kid grow up, and I really
Yes.
want to support her or him in how that is going. It's the strangest of experiences, and I didn't understand love, I would say, because I think romantic love is still quite conditional. I didn't understand unconditional love that I had received as a little baby before I had our own little baby in our hands.
It's so funny. I listened to, so part of what this last period of our life has been, we had all these young singles and these new daughters to be in my life, and we'd get around, we'd watch shows like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, and you'd have these people on television talking about, all I want is unconditional love, and I just listen to them and I'm thinking, yeah, I don't really think you have any idea what that kind of love really costs you, because when people start doing things and you are tethered to them with some degree of unconditional love, you don't know what that costs. You don't know the pain. I mean, people have this idea that they think that love means it's this Boss will remember this one. Love means never having to say you're sorry. And it's like, I think that person was never married. Love means quite often having to say you're sorry.
Well, actually, that is part of your character if you never say I'm sorry. I mean, that has nothing to do with your relationship.
I believe it's Donald Trump that has taken this. I'll bring Donald Trump into the relationship because I'm the only one living in America here. He's the one who believes you should never say you're sorry. I thought, oh, okay, yeah. How have his marriages gone? You Europeans are used to politicians with very sketchy lives. It's just new for us here in the New World.
Well, grow a history and you'll be rich in those examples.
No, it's interesting, Sarah, you talking about how giving birth kind of made you face your own mortality. And that definitely happened for me, but in this weird paradoxical way, it also kind of made me think deeper about what it means for like immortality or eternal life. And I actually, maybe a month before I was supposed to give birth, I for some reason wasn't able to sleep. I wasn't able to sleep for a couple of days, and it started creating this anxiety that something bad was going to happen to the baby, that I was going to lose her. And there was just this moment of like coming to terms with what that would mean if that happened, and like how that process and what the story that I think I'm living in says about those things. And thankfully all was healthy and sleep. I went to the hospital, got some sleep, and you know, everything was fine. But I think going through that process of the birth, it made it more bearable. And you talk about like the body telling you things. Giving birth, especially if you're not taking any drugs, it tells you exactly what's going on with you, and you're having to ride these waves and you're taking on this pain. And I think for me, just like really reckoning with that idea of like the loss of this thing that so young that shouldn't lose its life so soon, in my mind, like made me be willing to take on that pain. Like I say, I would do it 7 times again just to give her that life. And then I just remember when they held her in my arms, it was this weird eternity moment where it's like, what do you mean? She's always been here. She's never not been here. She's always here. She always will be here. Like it was just this weird, like eternity moment that I try to hold in those moments when I'm not so in line with that idea of like something bigger than myself in this life. And so it's so weird where it really makes you face mortality, but like you also kind of dance with that question of like immortality as well. At least it was for me. And yeah, there was something really beautiful and humbling about all of it.
Yeah, you said that beautiful, and I can totally relate to that, because not so much with the first one, but with the consecutive kids, when they were there and we held them the first time, my wife and I always had the realization, oh, we've missed you so much. And how can you miss someone that hasn't been there, that hasn't existed before? It's just like, okay, there seems to have been this space that was meant for that child all the time, all the way. And it's just beautiful having this experience, and it's a rare experience these days if you look at all the anti-natalist movements and ideas, and if you look at birth rates in Europe and West. I mean, talk to Malcolm and Simone about that.
My mother and
Well,
I sometimes.
Sorry, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
There's an interesting thing, if we move back to the festival, about people who want to come and talk about meaning. I think John Vervaeke pointed us to L.A. Paul, Transformative Experience or something, and to Agnes Callard, Becoming. The whole idea that you want to become something that you have no clue about what it is. You want to get into a meaningful life and you have no clue what that would be for you specifically, or into a relationship that's really committed and that will change you forever, but you don't know into what and how you feel about it, or becoming a mother or father and being something, or a vocation in life that you might want to follow, or a saint that you would like to embrace, Dionysus Goethe, or in my case, Jesus. All of that is that falling in love into being something that you're not yet. And how does that work? I think that's part of the thing that we cannot fully we have a beautiful mind and we can see examples, but we at one point start to yearn to experience it. and that the body can really start testing the waters in a way. And you cannot take rational decisions there anymore. And the body takes over, just like it takes over when you're giving birth or when you're dying. Or, but it also goes into these smaller decisions that we all had to make and still have to make. I don't know how the next phase of our life will be.
Yeah.
How will it change our marriage? How will it change the way that we use the property? How will we live, etc.? How do you make that jump of faith, not just in a religious way, but also in those life choices that you're making? I think that's something that I hope that getting involved in estuary, getting involved with other people will start help develop into you that longing to make those jumps. Otherwise, you and at least I think you're right, then the birth rate will keep falling. And people will sort of get lost in saying, okay, why did I miss the boat? Why am I now 35, 40 years old and still not knowing where to ground myself, where to move forward? I think Erickson, the psychiatrist, has put beautiful work out there, what the challenges are there in each life phase and how important it is that we stimulate each other to make those choices in those phases. And then seeing how my father now gets to his end and really has lived a generative life, and how precious that is even for the people who follow after him. In that way, also that his life will remain fruitful even in the process of that's difficult to say, but yeah, in the process of dying right now. So just some pointers, I think, as to the festival and why it's so important that we meet and that we make the walk and not just have the talks from the speakers, but also have the estuary groups meetings, etc.
Yeah, I also wanted to add to that it's also okay just to experience it, because what I've heard you, Cassidy, and Stefan say about meeting your child for the first time and being like this very eternal moment. It was not like that for me at all, actually. So when I gave birth, I was actually pretty much severed from my body mentally. So I also did get medication just to like get the pain a bit less acute, let's say. And then when my baby was born, I mean, I had this very strong feeling like I have to take care of her, but I didn't really love her still. And that was also something that I really had to grow into. And one of the things also that I was kind of afraid of before she was born, like, what if she's going to be born and I don't love her? What about that? But then it's also okay just to do it and to undergo it. And of course, if you're already pregnant, then you have to go through with it. I mean, there's no opting out. But also with other decisions, you know, the feeling doesn't have to be there in order to do it, and then the feeling can come after. So sometimes the experience has to come first. And it's also been like that with my daughter. So when she was 3-4 months old, then the feeling came. And now, of course, I mean, I love her very much. She's the most important person to me in my life. But that had to grow, and it's in that way. Yeah, it didn't really confront me that much with the life after this life, but it did show me how patient and loving God is with us today in our lives. Because if I have to think about the amount of times I have to be patient with my daughter, and she's sweet, but then, you know, babies are going to be babies. They need attention all the time. They need feeding, they need changing diapers, and they're going to be moody, and there's nothing you can do about it. And they're going to cry in your ear, and you're going to be uncomfortable. But then it's like that, but then your entire life, and then God still loves you. And that's made me change my relationship with it's changed the way that I look at my relationship with God right now. And not so much after death, but right now, that's okay. I can make mistakes many times, but just as I don't even think about forgiving my daughter, not that she's intentionally doing anything bad, but then, it's I can be forgiven, and I don't have to worry about God's love for me. So that's what it's done for me mostly in that dimension, the vertical dimension.
For the first time now that you know that this is unconditional love. That there
Yeah.
was no other way for you to learn it.
Mm-hmm.
Or perhaps for some there is, but I haven't found another way of learning what really unconditional love is. And Saint Augustine has this beautiful sermon on doing things with love and how it doesn't cost you any energy anymore. I never thought that I would change diapers and actually love the idea of the baby getting clean buttocks and feeling nice again,
Yes,
rather than focusing on the diaper.
exactly. Yeah, it's
It's mind
completely
blowing.
the focus completely shifts from what I want and how the way I feel to how does she feel. I mean, of course, when she wakes up at 4 a.m. and she's awake, I sometimes feel like, can't you go back to sleep? But then still, my priority is, okay, she's hungry, she wants to eat. That's the most important thing. Whatever I feel, that has to come first.
Yeah.
And that's really unique.
And it changes you now in how you experience life. We talk about, of course, the unconditionality of God's love for you, but that's only because Jesus taught you that you could look at God as a loving parent. Otherwise, you would never had the conception that this tells you something about God. That's one of the weirdest things of Christian history. Once you figure out how brutal the idea of God was in so many cases, in so many cultures, in so many instances, you start to appreciate what Jesus did for you. I mean, it's insane.
Oh, it really is. You just read to the end of the book of Deuteronomy and you see the rewards for covenant faithfulness and the curses for covenant violation. And then you begin to see, okay, well, how does Jesus then come out of this whole story? And then, I mean, there's a reason in this corner we continue to have conversations between Jews and Christians and Unitarians and Trinitarians, and just the real blessing of it for me is always that we can have these conversations and that we enjoy these conversations. And this unconditional love business, most people, when they say unconditional love, they think what they mean is they want to be loved unconditionally, but the real treasure is in fact learning how to love. And I always tell people, in fact, somebody made a little meme of it. There's two lines in the world. Those who want to be loved, that line goes on forever. It's like, all right, get to the back of the line. The other one, those who want to actually love others, never any line. You are surrounded by people all the time, all over the place, who want to be loved and are dying to be loved. No, wait, just go ahead and do it. Nothing standing in your way.
I think there's something beauty in the diversity of the story too, and like we can just look at the difference between my story and Sarah's story. And I'd heard Sarah's story before because we're actually friends in the Netherlands. We baptized our babies together, and so seeing those differences in the way that motherhood was manifesting for her and for myself, and I always look in my life. It's like I think I needed that moment where it was just this connection and motherhood became easy because everything else in my life is new culture, new marriage, all of these things that are very foreign to me that I'm having to battle uphill of learning to love it in a different way. And I love all of it. It's all good, but it's difficult, and that integration process is difficult. So that motherhood piece of sliding in and being that easy thing has been so helpful in integrating the rest of my life. And I think, Sarah, for you, you're learning this disconnect that you had, this disembodied, is teaching you something about what it is to love. And it's probably perfect for your story and what you're learning. And like you probably won't know it till you look back. But I don't know. I just think there is something beautiful about that, and that we can share that diversity. And I don't know. I think that's what sort of turns people off about the idea of like marriage and childhood. It's often talked about in the idea of how this is beneficial for you instead of the idea of like what the beautiful story is. I think if we start talking more about that, we can say, yes, bearing a child is a burden, but it's a burden that you would take on 1,000,000 times to give life to somebody else. Marriage is a burden, but you take it on 1,000,000 times for the way that it changes you and makes you more human and faces your own sort of shortcomings. Like, I don't know. I think the story is, we're missing the story.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
Oh, my wife almost hit me, not physically, but the other day, I'm watching these children leave the house and now they're starting to get married. And I say to my wife, because after 5, I was the one that was kind of like, how many are we really going to have? And I'm looking at my wife and she's surrounded by, because there's 9 years in which we had 5 children. And so we've got all these little ones running around and I'm watching all of this and I'm pastoring a church and we're doing all this. And it's like, at some point, we're probably going to have to stop this. And the other day I watching them all leave, I said, honey, I guess we could have had 6 or 7. She looked at me like, you were the one that had to stop at 5. And I was always amazed by the fact that, I'm with her through this extraordinarily painful, traumatic, extreme thing of childbirth. And she actually was always frustrated having babies in the United States after we had one in the DR, because basically in the DR, the nurses kind of left you alone to have your labor. In America, it's like they want to strap you to a bed and put a little monitor on and all of this stuff. And she's like, that's why she never let me bring her to the hospital very early, which got a little scary a few times. But because for me, because like, hey, I'm the one that's going to have to do the catching here. And she looks at me like, you're going to complain in this division of labor? You complain? So, these things go. But it is interesting how the 5 of us here, unlike in some ways again, this little corner is majority male and majority unmarried. And here the 5 of us are all married with children. It's really interesting. And I think that arises, because we in some ways are being looked to as leaders. I don't know that people are necessarily putting it together consciously, but there's a sense in which this generational rhythm has been broken. I don't know that any of my children will have 5 children. Still possibility with some of the younger ones, but from some of the older ones now, it's going to be tight getting that many kids in, because we had our first one when my wife was 25. And so then between her age 25 to 34, we had those 5. There's a window there. And so maybe we are being looked up to as leaders because somewhere deep in people's psyches, there's something that is calling to them. And maybe that's something we should encourage in them.
Come to the festival and get a baby.
Get a wife first. I recommend that.
Well, I wouldn't
is
be.
important. I know you Europeans are even playing with that quite a bit, but I recommend to my people to get the ring and then the baby.
Okay. Well, I do want to say one thing here, because you triggered me with this whole story about the hospital and the DRC. 5 of our kids, fortunately, were born at home, and 4 of them in this house.
Wow.
It's very special if you can really follow the rhythm of your body and be as a partner, be there in whatever way that might give a little bit of support, if only in taking care of the other kids. But yeah, so it is a wonderful experience, and one of the most magical experiences, not about human childbirth now, but about my oldest daughter got a horse, Icelandic horse. I just talked to you about the horses for a second, and she had 2 sons here, and we brought them into the garden when she was nearing the moment of delivery. And that was so magical. The moon was shining and we were all sitting around. We said, okay, it's going to happen now. So we all got out, sitting quietly on the grass. and then that horse gets born in a white shroud. Because different from humans, the horse actually takes the shroud, the veil with it. It's so magical. Anyway, touch grass.
Yeah, can you arrange a horse birth during the festival? I think some people would like to experience that.
It's very magical. Actually, Paul, just if I could say something weird here, we had a
Why stop now?
my daughter had a group from university, and she said, we want to have a sort of a farewell festival, just 30 people or something. Can we come to your place? I said, of course you can. So they built a fire, etc., and they were all very wokies and stuff like that, doing the good for the world, and all beautiful people. And then at one point in time, we built this huge fire, and Halley's Comet is coming over, and the horses are coming to the fire and standing around them, and the boys say, I want to get wood from the forest and throw it in, but is that not very gender affirming or what have you? I said, you're free to do whatever you want. If you're a boy or a girl, go into the forest, get a tree, throw it on the pile, and enjoy yourself. It was so beautiful.
Oh, what we have done to our children. That is hilarious. Well, I don't know how long you guys want to go on here. Now this is what I've started doing in my estuary meetings. John Van Dock, when was here, saw me do it and was horrified because I added something to the protocol. And I don't know how well you know Dutchmen, but they can get a little testy about certain minutia. But I do it anyway. So let's have a round of takeaways from this conversation, and then Cassidy, you can fill in more details about the conference, and then we'll land the plane. How's that sound? So Cassidy, takeaways from this conversation.
Takeaways. That life scales in very interesting ways, and you can only discover that really by exploring each other's stories. And so, yeah, I'm excited that we get to continue doing that in the weekend in July. But yeah, Paul, that you've made that accessible to so many people through what you do. So I think that's my takeaway.
Thank you. Boss, takeaways from you for you.
Yeah, that you should be there anyway. It does help, you know. You can just do it.
I'm gonna be in Naples when you guys are up there, and so I mean it's
that's the same continent.
I know, but
Take a train, it'll be fine.
I'm gonna see Pompeii with my children. I mean,
my son is there now in Naples, and he can be here like in 16 hours, 8 hours, whatever you. I mean, he's there, no problem. You can even bring your family, camp out. Wait for the weather. See what the weather is like.
Okay,
It could be better in Italy.
If the weather starts turning bad, I'll say to my kids, I'll say, you know,
we could go north.
We could go to the Netherlands, and there's a little event right now with a bunch of those really strange people who watch my YouTubes, and they'll be like, some of them are a little like the kids that my kids would never ask that question, because usually when we go camping, it's like, go get the wood. You know? The nice thing about big families is there's no question about child labor. It is enforced, because if you don't have child labor, if everyone doesn't have a job, the house doesn't work, and it's miserable for everyone. So they all learned that early on. So, all right. Did you give a takeaway, or did you just once again say
I gave my takeaway.
All right. Charlie Brown.
Well, my takeaway won't be child labor. That's for sure. Apart from that, I found it wonderful to listen to Sarah and Bas and realize that, you know, it's not 3 generations, but 3 different phases in life, all involving welcome and farewell in some sense. And I think it will be beautiful to see that tie together at the festival. because that there's a lot of depth that you can take from that through all those phases in life to actually see that this is a process, this is a journey taking place, and us participating in this journey at different points in time. I think that's the takeaway that I'll leave there.
Okay, Sarah.
My takeaway will be the importance of our stories, and also sharing our stories and learning from other people's stories.
All right, Cassidy. All right,
What's your
go ahead. Oh, my takeaway.
takeaway?
I'm hurting, man. I'm hurting because I actually I want to say a thing about the not recording thing. So that whole not recording thing, I felt most acutely when I was at the ARC conference in London last fall, because especially during the Peugeot talk where I was in the room, that Peugeot talk he gave, being in the room was a very different thing than experiencing the talk online. And I've experienced that before with some of the other events that we've done with doing videos and such. But it is, we don't, here at Living Stones, we do Estuary every Sunday morning and we never record anything. And there is something about being in the room that really does not translate through video. And so I know it's going to be a controversial decision. I know I myself will have a degree of FOMO, fear of missing out, because I will miss out. And just talking to all you people, I mean, and I've had wonderful in-person experiences with all of you. And you know, I will never forget Sarah when we were down by that little Dutch village. I mean, that was fun. And Charlie Brown, we had some wonderful conversations last year, and of course Boss last year as well, and stayed with Cassidy and that 5-star baby. So no, I am gonna miss out, but I can't have this whole conversation lauding family and then say to my whole family, when again, and Boss understands this, I know he does, because once those kids get into their 20s and 30s, to actually corral them all together, I mean, that's where weddings are so nice, because often the only times it happens is funerals, which are nice in a different way. But so I have to value those opportunities. So sorry, I'm gonna miss out. But anyway, that's my takeaway.
You should miss out. You being at Pompeii with your family is much more important than being at our festival. I know that, so don't feel bad at all.
It's a time and space limitation. So
Yeah.
all right, Cassidy. So fill us in on details, this kind of thing.
Yeah, so the festival, the dates are July 5th through the 7th. It's going to be in Leusden, the Netherlands. We are capping the ticket sales at 40. Tickets are still available, but it's turning out to be another international affair. We've got people coming from Germany, the UK, Belgium, also the Netherlands. We're really excited. We're definitely hoping to get some more Dutch participation, especially because we're really trying to help those who want to get it outside of the screen into real life person. We want to give you that chance to meet people and have a place where we can commune together to figure out how that works in the Netherlands. So we'd love to see you. All of the information is available. There's camping available on the site. And if there's anybody who has any sort of questions or logistical issues about the festival, just reach out to me personally. I'll let Paul put an email down. We want to try to make this as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, especially if you are local. So please reach out. If there is something we can do, we want to figure it out for you. So, oh, and if you'd like to support us, but you can't come to the festival, we're also selling Breakwater t-shirts. They're limited availability. Yes, Charlie Brown has it perfectly product placed, much better than my product placement. But yeah, if you want to support that. And that design was actually designed by Mud Hut, Emily. She's part of the Discord and the Bastions of Beauty community, and she did such a lovely job. So yeah. I think that is it, unless you have any other questions.
So Cassidy will send me whatever links you want me to put below. This will go
Yeah.
into no wait, no ads immediately. But as always with no wait, no ads, because the impatient among you must see things right away. It will be out soon, but not all the details in the notes get into no wait, no ads. I finish this recording, it gets rendered, and I post it immediately for those no wait, no ads people that just can't bear a moment without, you know, all their FOMO. So if you're that kind of person, you should definitely get your tickets and go to the Breakwater event. So, all right, thank you all.
Thank you so much for
all.
having us.
Thank you.
Very well.